So when I first started my company in the late 90s, I spent about 6 months trying to get business, going out there, trying to sell, and nothing really happened. I think I brought in $20,000 within the first 6 months. And then I got this big break, and it was a large financial services firm that was going through a change. They had 13% turnover. They had less than 50% of the people were doing performance review, which means that less than half the people, less than half of the employees in the organization were sitting down with their managers to figure out where they were in the organization, where they were going. And they had tried to change this for 2 years, right? And they were unable to change it for 2 years. They had spent literally millions of dollars on competency models, on new performance reviews, on consulting firms. And they came to me, and they said, this is the problem, and what do you think? And this was my big break. I mean, this is the thing that would, if this were successful, this would put my company on the map, right? If it weren't successful, then I would teeter along and either succeed or fail over time, who knows. I guess that's what we all do anyway. But I sat there and I listened to them, and I reminded myself in retrospect of this bumper sticker that I remember seeing, which said, hire a teenager while he still knows everything. Right? And it was this sense of like, okay, I got this. I can understand this. I know exactly what the problem is. I know exactly why it's not working. And I'm going to solve this problem for them. We started out with a pilot. And in the pilot, we had 250 people in the pilot. If this were going to go to the main rollout of the program, it was going to be 2,000 people globally. Right? So for a pilot, I hired a bunch of consultants and trainers. I came up with the plan. I investigated a lot of different possibilities and issues. I talked to a lot of people. We ran the pilot, and it went really, really well. Right? Everybody was really happy for it. We learned a tremendous amount. We collected a tremendous amount of data. And then we went into full rollout mode. Now in full rollout mode, I needed to get this right. Right? I'd hired 100 people to work for me. I was leading this change. I was the leader. I was supposed to have answers. So I created these documents. I mean, I remember still, they were beautiful. It was beautiful documents. You would have loved them. Right? It was color-coded. There were very specific questions and answers. I had pages and pages and pages of FAQs, right? Frequently asked questions. So for every question that we had, I had a really, really great answer. I brought in everybody, I trained them, I figured out the design of the rollout itself. The design of the rollout was that we would break 2,000 people into 100-person groups. I would take consultants and coaches and trainers and match 2 people against every single 100, every 100-person group. I would stagger the rollout so that every 2 weeks, another 100 people started to go through the program. I really had an answer for everything, and I'd figured it out. So, pretty deliverables, centralized control, answers for everything. These are all really, really good warning signs that everything's going to crash, right? And it did. I know usually I'm supposed to come up with my epic fail moment somewhere in minute 8 of a TED Talk, but my epic fail happened actually soon. Everything started to fall apart. The first 100 people came in, and by the way, the pilot was all based in New York. The rollout was global. The first 100 people came in, and they happened to be night workers, right? They happened to work at night, but our trainings were scheduled in a centralized way so that everything was happening in the day. So already they were unhappy. The coaches were having trouble, the trainers were having trouble, the client was upset, and then we had another 100 people come in 2 weeks later, and then 2 weeks later another 100 people, and then 2 weeks later another 100 people, and literally everything was falling apart. I remember this moment really clearly. I was in a town car. I had been staying at the client till 3, 4 o'clock in the morning and then taking a car home and then coming back. I was living in Princeton, New Jersey at the time. The main rollout was in New York City. And I remember taking this car home and thinking, I have completely screwed up my main opportunity. Like, this was my chance. I really thought I had this figured out. I mean, the schedules were so clear in my mind. And I went back to my apartment in Princeton, and I shut the shades, and I didn't emerge for 3 days. I just shut the shades, and the first day, I sat there and just berated myself. I cried, okay? We'll just put that out there. And I berated myself, and I sat there and I was thinking, like, I'm an idiot. Like, I had this. Like, I had this and I squandered it, right? And so that was my first day. That was fun. The second day, I started to question everything. right? I started to ask every single question. I didn't take anything for granted. I started to deconstruct everything that I knew. I had worked in other consulting firms for 4, 5, 6 years. I had an MBA. I had all this knowledge, all this content, and I started to question absolutely everything. Why are we doing that? Why is this not working? Where did this come from? And there's something I kept coming against. I kept coming back to this change curve, right? This is the change curve if you haven't seen it before. These are the emotions that we go through when we have change, right? And these emotions start in shock, numbness, and denial, and they plummet from there, right? It goes down from there into depression, and eventually understanding, acceptance, moving on. Now, this is morale and competence is on the left there, and time is on the right. This is the process. Every single change management process that anyone ever does in an organization that I had seen up to that point is based on this change curve. And the idea is you have to move people through these stages. If you're a leader, and I was the leader, right? This was my project. I was responsible for it. I'm the leader. I have to move people through this change curve. That was the idea. And this change curve, here's a simple one. If you go to the internet, you put on change curve, you'll see these all over. This is a simple one: denial, resistance, exploration, commitment. This is one, I love this. This is one for overseas assignments. You know, if you look at it carefully, there's nothing good about an overseas assignment, right? I mean, you start in anxiety and apprehension. You go down to depression. When you go up, you're at anger and criticism and reassessment. And finally, months later, you emerge way lower than you started, right, in anxiety and depression, right? I don't know why anyone would do an overseas assignment if they look at these things. This, I love this one too. This is the one for positive change. You've just gotten married. You have a baby, right? You go from uninformed optimism, right? You have no idea what it's like to have a baby, but you're just really excited about it, to realizing what it's like, right? And then you're into informed pessimism when you either check out overtly or covertly, and then hopeful realism. You never end up on these change curves, by the way, any higher than you started, right? It makes me wonder why you would go through any change in the first place.